get started today. Thank you all for joining. We'll get started. Don't know, those of you that haven't checked, last time we had 47 people that checked out our video online after we did the meeting and posted it. So we still get a pretty good following, even though they don't always join us for the event itself. So, and I was going through and thinking about the topic today and trying to decide how can I do this. And let's see now. I want to share screen. And I want to go to here. And let's see. Do you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
So I know a lot of us have this. This was my little simple effect. Just a little wooden, few pieces of wood and a slot to go in the way of the lathe. And that way, rather than balancing a tool on the bed of the lathe and hoping it doesn't fall, it just fits into those slots nicely. And I can keep a couple of tools handy if I'm using them and going back and forth. And it saves sharpening nicks out of the end of the tools when they drop. Now, let's see. The other thing I did in my shop, I'm on the taller side of the average of those of us in the club. So my benches for grinding are at 42 inches off the floor. That is much more convenient for me to do sharpening. I'm not bending over all the time. They're there, they're set, they're ready to go. And I didn't want to take up a lot of space. So if it's that high, you can see the legs, they're relatively narrow together versus the height. So I solved that issue by bolting it to the post. So it's impossible for that bench to fall over and or move. So those are the simple things that I've done that kind of help me out in my shop.
I like the layout of your grinders.
I find them very handy. And by the way, Spence, the trick that Dave Madden, I think, showed us about how to set it and then just put that block in for the various angles, man, does that make it slick. A lot less hassling around.
In my opinion.
Yeah, they work really well. Somewhere along the line, I lost my 35-degree Raptor setting. So I borrowed one from Dean from the college, and I set one of those plastic tubes for that and then gave it back to him. Once you set it, you don't need them anymore.
Right.
Exactly. It just saves so much time. It's for me, it's just me and sharpening. My guess is I sharpen a lot to begin with. That addition, I probably doubled or tripled the time that I go to the sharpener because it takes such little time.
Now, Spence, have you got that set up on two different grinders?
Yes, I do.
Do you use the same spacers for both grinders?
No, I don't. Probably because I'm lazy. There's a slight difference between my two grinders, so I'm careful to use I have two Verigrinds, and I use one Verigrind on one grinder and the other Verigrind on the other one. And I'm careful to make sure that I sharpen the tool that I'm sharpening, I use the same grinder on.
Yeah, because I got to thinking it would be possible, but in order for you to use the same spacers, you would have to get that system mounted exactly in the same position relative to the center line of the grinding wheel
And the
on
height.
both wheels and height, right?
And that's really, I'm finding that really hard to do. It's easier to,
Bruce,
I have them labeled. And
Bruce, I think for the benefit of others, you need to describe what you're talking about, because you introduced this as what Dave Madden said. Well, you're talking about having PVC pipe to adjust the spacing. Is that correct?
Yes.
yes, it is. That's correct. And
Others may not realize that.
yeah, right there. There it is.
That is something that you set and lock in. Let's see. And
So
then
you've adjusted the lengths for the different angles.
You see the little
no, see this little block?
wooden block?
That's the only thing you adjust. And you have one of those blocks for each angle that you want to use. So on the Raptor, you use the longest arm, and that's what you set this length to match. And then it's a function of calculating the change in length of those blocks to fit in. And then that will automatically change the angle at which you grind the tool.
The bevel angle.
Right.
Okay, thanks for that. If I remember right, we had another chips and grits discussion or a Tuesday demo, something about this whole setup before. Does anybody recall when we did that before?
I don't
I don't recall, but it's been quite a while.
I don't know. I think we were on vacation at the time. We never made them because we didn't quite understand them. So maybe sometime someone will have to show us.
Be more than glad
What
to
I
do
did
that.
is I use a 45 primarily on my grind on my gouges. So I actually cut one of the white PVC pipes that says that's for 45. And then I have the other one that's 60. And usually I'll use the 45. Problem with that is that you got to be careful when you go with your gouge that you've got the right piece of PVC in there. With the just having the 60, it kind of alleviates that issue.
Referencing the picture that we're looking at, I've also cut PVC to match the platen, and I've several platens that I've set at well, for example, my scrapers I set at 70 degrees. So I took a platen and welded it at 70 degrees, and then I used a spacer, PVC spacer. So my flat grinds are exactly just as easy as the gouge grinds. Bruce, question. It's probably the picture, but your CBN wheel on the right-hand side, the surface is really dark. Is that just a shadow?
Yes, it must be, because I don't recall it being that dark.
Yeah, it's got to be a shadow. The two that are way over on the left also have that same darkness about them.
Since I hadn't thought about doing a piece of PVC for the platen, but I could see where that would be and make a difference in the adjustment on the grind.
Well, the other thing about the platen is, you know that if you're scraping, you're using the burr on a scraper and the burr disappears really quick. So you constantly have to go back to sharpen it. Well, with my setup, again, I just leave the grinder running, go over and knock. I use a credit card diamond hone, knock the old burr off, lay down, put a new burr on, and I'm back to work. And with it permanently in that position, my bevel angle is always the same.
Why do you knock the old burr off?
Because if you look at it under a microscope, what happens is if you don't knock the old burr off, when you put the new burr on, it piles up. So you don't get an even burr. You get one that goes like this.
Didn't know that.
You should always take a hone on a flat surface and knock off the old burr before you put a new one on.
Didn't know that.
I didn't realize that either.
But I will now.
So if you're doing that, Spence, are you going the opposite direction to knock it off or the same direction? Or along the surface?
I'm not sure. I didn't understand that.
Okay, so when you are knocking it off, are you going the same direction, a different direction, or along the surface?
What I do is, here's the scraper. I just literally flatten the top of it. Then I go back onto where I am. I go back onto the platen, just go straight across, and it puts a new burr on all the way across the top.
Okay, thank you.
So what do you take it off with? Is it like a CBN card or diamond card?
Diamond card.
Okay,
Now
just
you're
flat
going
across the top.
flat. I'm sorry. You're going flat with your scraper. You lay your card flat, and I guess then you negative rates.
Now,
Follow the top bevel.
Rick, you get closer to the mic because I can't hear
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this cheap old computer. You're using the top. You're doing a negative rate scraper. You would have to follow the top.
Follow the top bevel. Yes.
Okay. All right. I understand now. Yeah.
Speaking about bevels, guys, I mean, this is off subject, but there was a point where I thought that negative rake was God's gift to wood turning. I have modified my opinion about that quite a bit. And in fact, I'm in the process of removing all of the negative rake off any of my scrapers. The reason is because I find that they don't cut very well, basically. Now, I think obviously it's a function of the negative rake, which makes it softer. But in my opinion, it makes it too soft. I can't get the ridges out of a bowl with a negative rake on my scrapers. So I prefer to have a very sharp burr flat on the top. And granted, I don't go in horizontally. I'll go in a little bit negative, but I prefer to have the negative on the tool rest as opposed on the tool.
Well, Spence, I've had the opposite effect with my negative rake scrapers. I can go in and take tool marks off fairly easily and quickly. And I do leave it horizontal, but I also have to have a good sharp burr on it.
Yeah. I guess it's personal preference. I don't know, but I didn't like it. I just, I kept fighting it because, my brain was telling me this is really the good thing and this is really the way to go. And I just, so I got one left that had a pretty serious negative on it that I haven't able to, I've got to take a 32nd or a 16th of an inch off it before it's flat.
Well, the key is what works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. We were looking at the CBN wheels there, commenting about if I can ask a question. Does anybody know how you do clean or dress up a CBN wheel?
I like to try that. The first thing you do is you get one of these CBN wheel erasers, which helps, but really doesn't get them clean. What I do is I take a stainless steel wire brush and some goof off, and basically I scrub the wheel.
Okay. Is the eraser just like a sandpaper eraser, or is it a different kind of compound?
It's a different, now maybe somebody can help me out here, but it's a different kind of compound. And the one I have comes from Trend, specifically for CBN wheels. I do not know what the composition is, but it seems to work pretty good.
Is the stainless steel brush, that's not too abrasive to put on those wheels?
No, I didn't find it. Now, the wheel's not spinning when I'm doing it.
Okay.
I'm just, kind of doing this and then wiping it off.
I'm not sure, but they say over time, if you buy a 180 wheel after you use it for a while, it's now a 200 or a 220 wheel.
That's correct. The reason is the diamonds get their tips knocked off.
That's been a problem my whole life.
Yeah, when you buy a CBN, you need to figure that whatever grit is advertised on the wheel, that in fact it is at least one grit finer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for those tips. I'm gonna have to clean ours sometime.
Is
Yeah,
that finer, Spence, even without the wear on it?
I'm sorry?
Is that, will the grit on the CBN wheel be finer than listed even without wear on it?
No,
Okay,
that's a wear.
okay, fine. So over time,
Yeah,
you'll get yourself a finer one.
and believe it or not, it doesn't take very long for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if you buy an 80 grit CBN wheel, realize that it's actually a 120.
Mm-hmm. And you can do that pretty quickly, the amount that you sharpen.
Yep. But you know what? Interestingly, they don't seem to go any farther than that.
Mm-hmm.
That 80 will be a 120 for its life. It's just, I think, the process of adhering the borite to the stainless steel provides a whole bunch of these things, which end up being these things.
I sure do like them though. Boy, what a difference they've made in sharpening.
Yeah. One of the biggest differences is they don't reduce in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
You can maintain a bevel for the life of the wheel if you want.
Well, we can set those jigs up that we use. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to use them because they wouldn't be repeatable.
Exactly.
It also eliminates heat buildup on the tool and losing the temper in the steel.
Well, you certainly have given me something to think about. I got that new little lathe last spring, and I think maybe I'm gonna upgrade my sharpening stuff now and just improve the shop because I still have the old whatever they're made out of. The old sharpening wheels, and I don't have any of those setup helpers. So when I get back, maybe that's my next project.
Yeah, you'll
It's
take a
fun,
lot
Dick.
less steel off if you
Mm-hmm.
get the right setup. The tools
Dick?
last a lot longer.
Dick, when you get back, give me a call. I want you to come over to my shop first, and then I'll come over to your shop. I want you to see what the actual full setup is, and then you can figure out how the the positioning of your grinder as well as the positioning of the one-way holders. There's a fair amount to it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I'll take you up on that.
Thank you.
Dick, I'd invite you to my shop so you could use my equipment, but it might be a little uncomfortable sharpening over your head.
Come on,
that's
don't you
harsh.
as a courtesy to height challenged people, don't you have one of those little boxes like Ed Jones had in his shop that you
Gotta
can
bring
pull
your own,
out for us shorties?
I do have a milk crate we can turn over and you can stand on. Yes.
Let me
guys
tell
are
you,
cool.
he enjoys having long legs. We go
Mhm.
trout fishing together, and we're both wearing waders, right? And he's leading the way. You know, he's up to his thighs, and I'm over my waist. And he's looking back and said, "Oh, it's getting deep, isn't it?"
You know, talking about sharpening though, Ken and Kathy were over at my shop the other day and we were working on a thing and we wanted to do a shear cut. Well, what was happening is we were only getting dust off of the cut, sharpened the tool, and then we started to get curls. So sharpening is well worth the effort and the time.
You commented about not taking much material off. I don't know if any of the rest of you do this, but I put a rare earth magnet underneath the wheel on the outside of the metal surround on there, the safety part that surrounds it. And it's surprising how much metal accumulates on that. I have to clean that off frequently, thinking I'm only taking little bits of metal off each time I sharpen, but it adds up. And that's why gouges get shorter.
One comment, and I know I'm speaking to the choir when I say this, but really, really be careful about what steel you put on your CBNs. If you just touch a CBN wheel with a piece of cold rolled steel, the wheel is ruined. You cannot get it out. It's just done. So you need to just take it off and throw it away. So just really be circumspect when you pick something up. Even the Benjamin Best tools are okay, and they won't gum them up. But I even am circumspect when I pick one of those up.
You also have to be careful when you're adjusting your platform. Don't get the platform too close and grind the edge because
That
you'll
sounds like
grind the
experience
platform.
talking.
No, I've been very lucky not to do that. I'm very
Oh my goodness.
conscious of that.
Ken was talking about that magnet.
Yeah,
There you can
that's
see
it.
the results of mine.
Yeah. I like doing that because it helps to keep some of those particles from getting elsewhere on the stand where the grinder is. But I do have to clean it off periodically.
Amazed at how much off when you're sharpening a tool.
Yeah.
Yep. By the way, I'm addicted to my source of magnets. When your electric toothbrush gives out, take it apart. There's a little bitty magnet in there, and that's what that is into my grinder. So I get a replacement supply every now and then, and I never run out.
I recently bought a box of, I think, 256 rare earth element magnets through Amazon for a relatively cheap price, something like $10, $12. And it's got multiple sizes and they're all the rare earth, very strong magnetic field to them. Got more than I'll ever use now.
Put them everywhere.
Well, I took a hint from Spence and I glued a couple of magnets to the front of my my lathe to hold my chuck keys right there, and it works well.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work for me. They're not strong enough, or I don't have the big ones. He took all the big ones, I guess, so.
I can fix that now. I have more big ones.
Okay, because mine fell off. I decided it's catching dust. I do want to, Ken brought this up last night, but I want to make sure that I mention it, is we had a Tuesday demo where we were talking about the foot pedals, the on and off foot pedals for the, like the bandsaw and the drill press. And Dan Hall had mentioned that as a safety feature, and that's been something we added to our shop. That's been a great feeling of, added a great feeling of safety when using those tools, to be able to have your hands free and know that you can turn it off or on without your hands. So
Yeah, what
That-
I did was I just bought these, I think they're Win foot switches. And it's just the on off switch. Plug it in and turn the bandsaw on, for example. Use your foot switch to turn the bandsaw on. You don't have to take your hands off of the item to reach over and turn the bandsaw off. Just lift your foot up. But and same thing for the drill press. It has been an additional safety feature in our shop.
I got one from Harbor Freight and I hooked it up to my drill press. Now I can press it once and it'll stay on, so I don't have to keep my foot on the pedal if I don't choose to. But if I press it again and keep my foot on it, it keeps it on. Then if I let my foot off, it shuts off automatically. So it actually has two functions, which, and I think it was really cheap. I think it was like only $10 or something like that. I was really surprised at how inexpensive it was.
Mhm.
Are those 110 or 220 switches?
110.
Mine are 110.
Yeah, 110. I imagine you could get them at 220. I just never looked for one because I have no use for it. Most of my stuff is 110. But you're right. If you're drilling something, you don't have to take both your hands off of it. You can shut the machine off without having to move your hands and your eyes away from what you're working on.
Mhm.
Bruce, what was your goal for today, if I could ask?
Just to have people bring up things that they've done in their shop to improve the safety.
Okay.
I'm still got a head full of coffee, but I'm over.
Talking about safety, I got one of those peak air filter hoods when I was up at the symposium. And it had sat in my drawer until a week or so ago. And I first started using it. I am really impressed with the quality and of that hood. That I balked about the price for months and months, and then I finally bit the bullet up there because they had a pretty decent deal on it. But it is really a very comfortable, effective piece of equipment. I think I would put it up there at the top of the list of things that you should have when you start turning.
Mm.
I very much like mine. It's the peak power cap that you're describing that
Mm-hmm.
I think Gary Frank first introduced us to it. I forget who told him about it first, but
Howard started it, I think.
Howard did. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's very lightweight and comfortable, well balanced, and I feel naked turning without it now.
Mm-hmm.
It may seem expensive, but I think it's an inexpensive insurance for your lungs over time. So I think it's well worth it. I think gradually our whole club is going to be having it in their shops. More and more people are buying them.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know, not so necessary maybe when you're turning or as much, but certainly when you're sanding is where it really comes into really starts to shine.
Well,
And it was, done using it and just took the air hose to blow it off, the dust off the cap, and inadvertently went by where the filter was. And the amount of dust that came out from where that filter was amazing. A lot of it.
Well, Rick, you realize when you're using compressed air to blow that off,
Yep.
you're now throwing that back up in the air around you. I use a vacuum cleaner to clean the surface of those off.
Yeah.
That way it doesn't blow it back into the room.
Mm-hmm. That's a point.
You'd be surprised. I guess you'd have to check your car, but I've noticed even if we're turning and not sanding, there's a lot of dust that ends up in the air no matter what. So it's helpful to use it all the time, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I've been turning some woods. I forget now which ones they are, but no matter how I try to get a good cut, I still end up with sawdust for some of these woods. Even though I get a good cut surface, it still somehow ends up with sawdust. So that tells me that no matter how good I'm turning, there's still dust going into the air. So I like the advantage of having this fresh filtered air going over my face to protect me from breathing that.
What else?
Who
do
else
people
has
like?
those? Kathy and I, Rick, anybody else?
Jerry, Frank?
Mark
Anybody
has
else?
one. I think Chuck Brown now has
Yeah,
one.
I think it is.
There are quite a few people that have got them that really like them.
Mhm.
I haven't heard of anyone say that they didn't like it.
Oh.
And I did hear a lot of people that didn't like the trend unit because of the weight and the fact that when you put your head down, it kind of pulled your head down.
Mm.
I recently saw one that was made by 3M. It kind of looked like one of the Star Wars Stormtrooper hats and had a separate battery that clipped on your belt. And it seemed like it would well, but I didn't have an opportunity to try it. But it had the ability to clip earmuffs on the side of it and everything else if you wanted to use those. You still could do that with these by just putting them over top of it.
What's the brand that you like?
It's Peak, Peke. Mhm.
Okay,
It's called a Power Cap, and they have two different models. You want to get the Power Cap model that has IP as a
IP.
part of the model name because that's impact protection. They make these for other construction services, so the face shield on some of them is not impact resistant. So you do want the IP version of it.
okay, I just kind of spaced out because I was going back to the trend units that nobody seemed to like for the reasons that you mentioned. Okay, I've written that down. Peak Power Cap IP.
Yeah,
I'll take a look.
yeah, you really should. They're really nice. As a matter of fact, Gary Frank had something come off of his lathe. It came up and hit the shield, knocked one of the air filters off the side of it, but it saved his head.
Mm-hmm.
What are they running now? 600, 700 bucks?
They're just a touch over 6, around 620. However, at the symposium, they were selling them at the older price, which was 580, I think is what I paid for mine. And then I got extra shields and things like that for it.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's a bit pricey.
Yeah, it says it's $5.79 online right now. Dick,
That's
I'll
what I
send you
paid.
the link.
I talked with the representative for Peak when I think it's the owner actually, when I was at the symposium. I don't know if anybody else that was there had the opportunity to do that. And he is willing to give us a Zoom presentation, not so much of just the air cap that he sells, but it's more about the air itself, the what we breathe, the particles, size of particles, what the different nomenclature means as far as the thickness or the size of the dust particles. I have tried to reach him to have him do that for our meeting. I have not heard back from him yet, but I will continue to do that. It will not be in September or October, but maybe November. We have an IRD, I think, don't we, Ken?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have to bump him into next year, but I think it would be well worth to hear what he has to say.
Mhm. Well, Bruce, when you introduced the topic, you sent the email, you said, have you had to change your layout for safety reasons? What did you have in mind for that?
Well, I know a lot of the times when we do sharpening, most of us have our sharpening very close at hand to the lathe. So you're not doing a lot of extra steps. You don't have the risk of tripping over stuff going to and from the sharpening. It's just a matter of rotate, sharpen, and go back to turning. So I know some of us have done that. I don't have it quite that ideal, but I'm within 4 feet of where I am, so that part works out, and I'm not going all the way across the shop just to do some sharpening. So the other thing is, I know, and some of us have got saws set up, and we've got outfeed tables, so you don't have to worry about grabbing that piece just before it drops off and hits the floor after you shove it through the shop or through the saw. So that part helps as well.
Something that I've added that sounds pretty silly, but I have found it to be really helpful. As we turn and we do get sawdust on the floor, I have an epoxy coated floor. And with sawdust on top of the epoxy, it gets really slippery quickly.
Mhm.
So where I exit my lathe area, I have put an outdoor mat there that as I walk away from the lathe, that mat traps the sawdust that's on my bottom of my shoes and does not get tracked into the rest of the floor in the shop, which it is not as slippery. But you have to be careful. I had to be careful of that because getting sawdust out into the room on that epoxy floor, and that epoxy floor, if it's wet, number one, or number two, if it has sawdust on it, becomes quite slippery. So just having that little floor mat there has helped a lot. Plus, it makes Jamie happier too that I don't track the stuff in the house.
Now, we also have an epoxy floor, and yes, it gets, if you're not careful, it'll get very slippery with sawdust. So what we do is we simply vacuum up as soon as we can to get it off of that part of the floor.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Now, you both have
Hey, Mark.
epoxy floors, but you also have the grit in the epoxy, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, well, they threw what they spackles or speckles on the floor. I think there's give it coloration for one, but they do help as far as making the floor not quite as slippery. But when you get sawdust on there, it's still quite slippery.
Well, when we did our floor, we've got paint flecks, part of it, but the final surface was a clear epoxy with, it's actually just sand in the mixed into the epoxy, and it gives just enough frictional resistance to make it less slippery, but it's still a slippery surface.
Can anybody make an observation about how slippery the floors get when you're turning stuff that's been sealed in wax and you get that
Oh,
wax on the floor? That's a real prescription for a skating rink,
Yes.
other than just cleaning it up right away. My approach has been, and this goes back to Bruce's observation about my height, uh, is I had to build a little height into my floor. So I've got multiple layers of those rubber mats. And I can just peel when I get a rubber mat that gets too slippery with stuff on it. I just peel it off like you'd peel the cover off your visor and start with a fresh one.
That's a good idea.
Hmm. Yeah, we always try to scrape off as much of the wax as possible, but there's always some residual you just can't get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
Another little trick that I've been doing lately, and it's really working out well, is I've taken a trash can and I've put it just underneath my lathe. Now, some people that have shelves and things can't do it, but I'm open underneath that. And I just take and scrape the turnings and stuff right off of the lathe, and they go right into the trash can. So it does make cleanup a little easier. And it kind of prevents the big quantity of turning shavings from building up. So that's helped a lot.
With your setup over there, having turned on your lathe, that's a nice setup to turn in. You've got that set up very conveniently, very nicely.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate that. It's been an evolution for sure.
Mhm.
And you're always welcome, Dick. Anytime you want to come over, anytime anybody wants to come over, you're always
Mhm.
welcome.
Well, thanks. Be careful making those offers. I'm 3,000 miles away now, but I'll be back soon.
We look forward to seeing you. When are you coming back?
Halloween.
Halloween. Okay.
Hmm.
Deal.
so does that mean you wait for the first snowfall there and then come this way?
Well, sometimes it works out that way. It's we'll have to see. We haven't even had any leaves turn yet.
Wow.
Everybody, I assume, has pushers for their bandsaw to put
Mhm,
pieces through to keep your fingers far away from the blade.
mhm.
Oh, yes.
Design them, bring them over. I can cut them out in the CNC by the bundle if you want. That's what I have mine. I programmed it in, so every time I need a new one, I just cut it out on the CNC.
Aha.
I follow the 4-inch rule. Keep your fingers 4 inches away from that bandsaw blade. That's the way I keep my fingers.
Well, I use push sticks at times when others may not want to use a push stick, but I still have my fingers too. Actually, I always have two push sticks at the bandsaw. One to push it against the fence and one to push it past the blade.
And yes, I do have a push stick. One of them is really long and skinny. Occasionally, if I'm cutting something, the piece of wood that you just cut off is now very close to the blade. So I just use that little skinny thing, just reach in there, and it's like maybe 12 inches long or more, and just push it out of the way. I mean, I just don't like taking any chances.
Well, I use my bandsaw a lot for cutting, round blanks round. And what I've found out with that is I use a circle cutting jig, and it allows me to actually keep my fingers behind the blade as I'm turning it through. So I don't even have to get up in front of that blade, that's the danger zone.
Mhm.
What else we got this morning?
It sounds like everybody already has a safe layout. Or at least the ideas of it, so.
How
What about
many
lighting?
lighting's great. How many accidents have we heard of from people that are in our, do we know?
There's not many. Um, every once in a while, somebody will bring it up at one of our monthly meetings, but no serious accidents that I'm aware of in recent years.
The last one I can remember is, I can't remember Steve's last name, but he came and
Steve Vaughn.
he had a pretty serious bandage on his finger.
Yeah, he's willing to talk about it as a safety moment. He did end up with stitches, but didn't have to have surgery, so that was helpful.
Yeah, it might be a good thing to have him kind of address that.
Kathy, do you know how he got that?
I can't remember now. I think it was on the bandsaw, but I'm not sure. So we'd have to ask Steve, but if he's in town for a meeting, he said he'd be very willing to talk about it. And I did take a picture of it after the stitches were out, so that could be shown at a meeting.
Table saw used to be the most dangerous tool in your shop. However, it is no longer. The bandsaw is the most dangerous tool in your shop. So it deserves all the attention that you can give it.
In
Keep it.
my estimation, I think there's probably more accidents than we think, because a lot of us are kind of embarrassed to tell the story. How silly or how stupid the mistake was. I don't mind sharing mine if I do make a mistake, and in the hopes that somebody will take heed and say, I need to I need to be careful with that. But sometimes we just don't want to look like an idiot. Um, so
Yeah, I had one where I was holding a piece with my hand and then drilling down through it. And that worked fine until the drill caught, spun the piece in my hand, which by the way had a sharp edge around it, and left a nice little cut on the fingers that were holding that piece. So
well, I've had that too. I didn't have any injuries, but the piece of wood caught, and I was in a hurry and I didn't clamp it down. But I didn't have any kind of issues. But it's just a solemn reminder that, yeah, you need to clamp it down. When you get in a hurry, oh, this is just going to take a few seconds, and so yeah, you're right. You got to clamp it down, and um, safety first.
what else this
I
morning?
have to remember we deal with sharp tools. I've made the mistake, I think more than once, of somehow running a gouge through my hand to wipe off sawdust.
Hmm.
And then, oops, little, usually it's about paper cut type of cut, but I have to remind myself, don't do that. That was a stupid thing to do.
I have a pink rag that I have kept on my lathe since I've been doing this. That's exactly what I do. Whereas, and I have it that color, so yeah, that's exactly what I use it for, is for wiping the tools off.
Mhm.
And why do I do that? It's exactly what you said, Ken.
Yeah, you broke up, Rick. You couldn't hear the last part.
Yeah, for some reason when I turned my head, I said, yeah, I cut my hand doing that one time, which is why I keep the rag on the lathe that I use to do that. Wipe
Mhm.
when I'm finished.
Seems like Gary Frank has had more of the accidents with something falling off. We've all learned to check that things are tight and turn down the speed on the lathe from Gary because of accidents he's had and told us about. So he's not here, but I appreciate the fact that he has been willing to share some of those things.
Yeah.
I miss the days of Ed Jones.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's always something going on that we were ribbing him about.
I'm so sorry I never had an opportunity to meet him. He sounds like he was quite the character.
He was a
Mhm.
class act.
Mhm.
The original curmudgeon.
Are you number two?
So do you remember a few of those kind of incidences from your time with Ed Jones? Either of you?
Well, he had this nice screen that he put up to keep chips and stuff from flying away. And if you go look at it, he'd tell you about where this various piece went through and shattered all the plastic ribs in this area. And here's where another one went through. And of course, he's the one that in the turning at YEI sent a piece all the way up and stuck it in the ceiling. So
We haven't had any emergencies like that at YEI since I can remember.
Yeah, let's keep it that way though.
Sounds like a good idea.
Otherwise, we'll have a first aid class at the same time, right?
Well, we have a kid.
Just as as you mentioned that, Kathy, for the people who congregate there at YEI for demos and all the stuff that uses the lathes, who among us all are doctors and nurses?
Well, Bruce Peak is the only doctor that I know of in
Yeah.
our group. Several of us have had first aid training
Mhm.
and AED training, but I think Bruce is our only medical doctor.
Okay, we got to make sure he comes to all the meetings then.
Well, you're gonna have to talk him out of spending less time in New York, like you spend a lot of time in Maine. He does that in New York now, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Or we have to
just
find a new
curious.
medical turner.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ken and the people that were at the symposium saw a shield made out of aluminum, slotted aluminum, wasn't it, Ken?
It's an extruded aluminum structural member and had a plexiglass shield that was between the turner and the audience. I liked it a lot. I'd like to come up with that for our club.
I think we can. It also had a light up at the top, which really got the light in the right area. And I will say that I have gone down to Phoenix meetings more than a few times this year, and they have that same type of shield in front of their lathes when they do demos down there. So maybe that's something as a club we should be looking at. So something doesn't fly out into the audience and hurt somebody. So I will look in.
Well, yeah, somebody had made a shield that I used when I did a demo. I think it was just right before COVID. And what happened was the shavings adhered to the plastic on the shield, and the camera had a very nice view of shavings, but not very much of me turning.
I didn't see that to be an issue when we were at the symposium, Dick, in Portland. I didn't see that becoming an issue. That doesn't mean that those pieces of plastic don't get static electricity. I know when you pull the plastic covering comes off and it's filled with static electricity, but I'd like to look into that, Ken, about getting that extruded aluminum and building one of those. I don't think it would be that difficult.
No, it's a fairly simple structure. It wouldn't be very hard to put that together. And Dick, yes, the static electricity is a problem. I didn't see it at the AAW symposium where they were using these. What I don't know is there are some anti-static sprays, and maybe they use that periodically before turning, but because they didn't have any dust extraction there either. So it could have been accumulating a lot of small dust particles, and I didn't see that. And I didn't see them wiping them down between sessions either. So, but that would be one issue we'd want to address so that it does stay clear.
Rick Baker is the fellow in charge of building those at AAW. He's also the fellow that designed and built the boom for the camera that they use. I have his contact information. We could give him a call and see what kind of plexiglass they're using in that and whether they've had any issues with that. So that's solvable.
Yeah.
It sounds like you had a pretty productive symposium, Rick, for your first one.
You know what, Dick? We really, I for one, really enjoyed the symposium. I learned a lot. I got to meet a lot of nice people there. Saw some great demonstrations. I will say, however, that the year before that, when we went to the Albany symposium, I think the demonstrations were better in Albany than they were at the AAW, but they were still, it was an experience. It was an event, an adventure. So yeah, I would definitely recommend anybody that's into wood turning to go to a symposium of some kind and meet the people. You talk about these people that are these great turners. Well, they're just like you and I. They do the same things we do. They're nothing special, and they are always more than welcome to sit and talk with you and chat and share their ideas. So yeah, it was a very good experience. I enjoyed it a lot.
Albany's coming up again in March this next coming year too.
Yep.
I enjoy the symposium presentations in both places, and it's just like any place. It's what you choose, whether that one ends up being one that you enjoy or get things out of or learn something in either place. So I found valuable ones at both symposiums, and some I didn't care for.
Yeah, I think we'll find that anywhere you go. You're going to be some that just don't really cut the mustard, but for the majority of it, they're there. It's good.
Well, it's valuable to go to those to know that you don't want to waste your time on them.
Yep. And then I think we had a few surprises at the Albany one. Some demonstrators there that we didn't know or hadn't heard of that were very, very good. And some that we had heard of that were good too. I mean, for like Mahoney and Addy, they did not disappoint in my opinion.
Right.
So You mentioned Mike Mahoney. I had an experience with Mike in the symposium last year at Albany. I had attended, I think, 3 of Mike Mahoney's demos, and I mentioned to him, I said, I knew he was from Plymouth, California, and I was later that year going to be in Plymouth. And I mentioned to him, I said, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods, son, coming up in a few months. And he open arms. He said, hey, come on over for a visit, and check me out, and I thought it was just kind of like an idle imitation at first, but I said, okay, and so I got his phone number. When I was there, I called up and he said, yeah, come on out, and he gave me a place to meet. He actually put me to work moving some tables, but he's just a regular Joe, like Rick said. He just hey, here's my ranch and here's my workshop and stuff, and it was just like visiting with one of you. And just a good experience and very friendly and willing to share information. Showed me all the everything he had saved in cabinets and stuff, and it was a very delightful experience. So, like Rick said, they're just regular guys, just like you and I. So it was great.
Not like you do, Kathy.
What did you say?
I said, not like you. They're just regular guys.
Okay, I get it. Sometimes I'm treated as one of the guys. Well,
Yeah.
quite often, so it's okay.
Okay.
I appreciate being accepted.
You are.
You are anytime.
Guys, I have to go and meet the people from the Mountain Spinners and Weavers, so I am going to have to jump off. Bruce, thanks again for doing this. Appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. Get better soon.
All righty. Anything else anybody have this morning?
That's it for me.
Oh,
Bruce,
Jim,
I just
was-
wanted to make a comment to you about, I would think you're probably pretty glad you're not out in Palm Springs right now.
You got that right.
yeah.
The smoke out there must be something terrible.
Yeah, they're having their hands full. Between that and the heat, that's not the place to be right now. All
Well,
righty.
thanks for the topic. Appreciate it.